It's taken me weeks to adjust.
Yeah. The conference has an app.
Yes.
There is too many. There is. Good evening, everyone. That makes me sound all powerful sometimes, doesn't it? All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for those who are here, those that are watching, and those who will be watching us later. I'd like to call to order the Rapid City Area Schools Board of Education regular board meeting. Mr. Swan is joining us by Zoom, and so FYI, all of our votes tonight will be roll call. So Shirley,
Troy Carr,
here.
Jamie Clapham. Here. Christine Stephenson. Here. Deb Baker. Here. Michael Berkland.
Here.
Walt Schwan,
Here.
Kate Thomas. Present. And our two student reps, Sam and Jace, are gone tonight. They had no report since they were on spring break.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, we'll have our invocation is that Mr. Wisniewski? There it is.
When I'm struggling to get back to course, I find this short quote from an American philosopher to be helpful. Share it. That would help. Thank you. Like I said, I just wanted to share this short quote from an American philosopher. It's this: do not let your fire go out, spark by irreplaceable spark, in the hopeless swamps of the not quite, the not yet, and the not at all. Do not let the hero in your soul perish in lonely frustration for the life you deserved and have never been able to reach. The world you desire can be won. It exists. It is real. It is possible. It's yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I think the most appropriate thing to do for the approval of the proposed agenda is to strike item number 6, student representatives reports. So I will take a motion to approve the agenda except for item 6.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, you're right.
Troy,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Walt,
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, at this time, we're gonna have the sharing the success by Superintendent Swaggart.
Thank you, President Carr. As you all know, that this is one of my favorite things tonight. We are asking 3 people to come forward for their hard work and the celebration that we want to recognize the work that they did on the 100-year celebration. So if I could have Sarah Gross, Kara Flynn, and Forrest Cooper join me. Oh, Sarah's not even here yet. Okay, we'll pause. She's on her way.
Yes.
I'm super excited about this one. Could I have the Stevens High School cheerleading group come up, please? Just if you could just line up right here. I will let the coaches say a few words, but I think most of you know that 30-some years ago, when I was hired at Stevens High School, one of the first extracurricular positions I held was cheerleading coach. And I put my experience from high school dance team and college cheer to work and became a coach of cheerleading. I traveled to many state tournaments with some great squads of young women, and always the years when we won the Spirit of Six, the enthusiasm and the spirit of the Rapid City cheerleaders that came together to earn that award. That award is judged by local people. It looks at a lot of different categories, how the cheerleaders support their crowd, how the cheerleaders support their team, how the cheerleaders behave in public, how the cheerleaders support other teams. And it's all done in that period of the state tournament, just those very few days. Wednesday practices, Thursday Friday and Saturday. And then they make this announcement and all of the cheerleaders, it is just an honor to be recognized as being good in all of those, be the top of all of those categories. But for Rapid City area school cheerleaders, it's always especially meaningful because it is an award based on Rapid City cheerleading squad. So today you are looking at the Stevens High School cheer team that won the Spirit of Six for the girls basketball tournament that took place in March of 2024. And I would like their squad coaches to come up and introduce the girls for you.
As you do that, can you explain what Spirit of Six is? I'm not aware of
Yep.
what it is.
I'm Jamie Exner. I'm the head cheer coach at Stevens. So the Spirit of Six Award is an award given out by the South Dakota Peace Officers Association in memoriam of the 6 Rapid City cheerleaders that died in 1968 in a plane crash. They were returning home from the basketball tournament. One of the students' parents was flying the plane and offered to fly the girls out there. And as they were returning home to Rapid City, they hit a gust of wind that pulled up one of the wings of the jet, flipped it, and they ended up crashing on the runway out in Rapid City. And this was prior to there being a fire department located out near Rapid Valley and by the airport. So big part of that was that it was a very unfortunate loss. 6 girls of a school that led their squad, which is one of the things that we talk about before we go to the tournament, is the meaning behind the award and to think about the impact of what losing 6 of your classmates would leave. You know, unfortunately, we've had to experience losing a student here or there, but 6 in one go would be quite a devastating loss. So we talk about what kind of cheerleaders we want to be, what kind of role models, and the example we want to set just to bring their legacy back home. So one of the special things is most of these girls were on the team last year in 2023 and won it last year as well. So a lot of them are 2-timers, which is really special. So I'm going to just introduce them, and girls, you can wave when I say your name. So first I have Sydney Hoke. I have Olivia Roberts, Grace Antonson, Sadie Morgan, Matea DeBray, Taylor Larson, Annika Steele, JC Thompson, and Lexi Sosby. And then this is my assistant coach, Jen Agana. And then not here tonight is our other cheerleader, Kate Terry. So we were just really excited to bring it back home and to give Rapid City a good name for itself and represent us at the tournament.
Thank you.
Bobby's gonna take a picture. Yes, I don't know, we might have, do we need 2 rows, Bobby?
You know the drill. Shorty's in the front.
That's why I did that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take two with the Rapid City 100-year celebration. Sarah, Forrest, Kara. So I feel like we've talked a lot about the 100-year celebration in the last few months. And I know that we've recognized how much hard work and dedication went into that, but to bring it fully to a close, I want to recognize Sarah Gross, Kara Flynn, and Forrest Cooper for their tireless efforts and countless hours poured into this project. They have been nothing short of remarkable. From the earliest planning stages to the final execution, your unwavering commitment and determination have been the driving force behind its success. Your willingness to go above and beyond, to sacrifice your time and energy, and to tackle every challenge with unwavering resolve have not gone unnoticed. Your passion for this project has been palpable, inspiring everyone around you to strive for excellence and to push the boundaries of what we thought possible. Your attention to detail, your creative vision, and your ability to navigate even the most complex obstacles have been instrumental in bringing this project to fruition. Your leadership has been a guiding light, inspiring us all to work harder, dream bigger, and never settle for anything less than our best. On behalf of everyone involved in this project and on behalf of the community of Rapid City, we want to express our deepest gratitude for your incredible contributions. Your dedication has left an indelible mark on this organization, and we are profoundly grateful for everything that you have done. As we celebrate the completion of this monumental project, we want to take a moment to reflect on the impact it will have for generations. And also let us take a moment to celebrate Sarah, Kara, and Forrest, whose passion, hard work, and unwavering dedication made it all possible.
Right, and before you all leave, any board members like to have comments or say anything before they, after the picture, I guess? No, you're okay, you're
You
fine.
want to be talking there?
All right, Mrs. Clapham.
I think Mrs. Baker did.
Mrs. Baker.
I just want to tell you, you guys did an amazing job with that. And you found my third grade teacher. I think that's the coolest thing ever. That was like from 100 years ago, but I was just blown away by everything that you did, and it was amazing. So thank you all for what you did.
All right, Ms. Clapham.
I, of course, echo what Ms. Baker said. I think it's just so impressive that I feel like the unity that it brought to the district. So many times we talk about how spread out this district is, and we have 23 buildings, and it's such a big geography, but there was so much unity and power in that, and seeing every school so excited about their presentation ever, and that was just really amazing to me. And I feel like it gave us like some steam and energy to continue that unity, and that we are a district and that we're all proud of each school and each student. And so I'm just so grateful for that, and sort of how that kicked off and lit a fire. So thank you so much for all of your effort to do that.
Anyone else? Mrs. Stephenson.
Yeah, and I have no idea how you got those videos made, but they were amazing. I just can't imagine how you did that. I just want to repeat that. That was amazing. And I really think that it should be orientation for every school board member and district employee. I learned so much about all those schools, and I thought I kind of knew about our schools, but there was so much to learn, and I really appreciate that. It didn't end at the 100-year celebration. What you produced will live on. So really appreciate it.
I'd just like to say thank you to you three, because I don't think you were assigned to do it or told to do it. It was out of a personal passion for the district. And Katie's pointing to Sarah. I remember, Sarah, when you came to me early about doing it. So I thank you for the passion. And if we could clone, maybe 10 more of you and have some others in the district to have that passion for the history and for the district, it would be great. So again, all three of you, thank you so very much.
And Sarah, what are you doing in your spare time now? Okay, you're cooking supper. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. All right, at this time, we will have persons wishing to address the school board. We have one, and Mrs. Thompson, you have 5 minutes.
I left the mic off. Oh, sure, somebody else was gonna speak with that over me.
Okay, I'm gonna start your timer in 10 seconds.
Oh, they'll start it off. I don't think it's that much time right now.
Well, I thought there'd be a lot of people speaking tonight, so I just brought a few tidbits. I brought some legislation. This was this year's legislation, and I think I might have mentioned this one before. This was House Bill 1197, and it did pass. It's an act to require the publication of measures taken to restrict the access to obscene materials by minors. And it applies to public schools and also applies to public libraries. And I also brought another piece of legislation. I'm gonna give this to Shirley, so. you can pass it around, please. And this is, so then I brought another one, which is a bill that didn't pass, but I think it was withdrawn by the sponsor. And I think the reason it was withdrawn by the sponsor was some of the things that were in this bill, 1237, were kind of included in 1197. So I guess they thought they overlapped a little, but it will give you some more ideas to work with, you know, when you're looking at your own policies. So I'll pass that around as well. Um, 1237 is quite interesting, as this is the one that was withdrawn. It was an act to establish provisions related to the rating of books available in school districts. So that might serve as a model for you, or at least food for thought for you, as that was something that was proposed and may turn up later. So this, the bill that passed, 1197, will go into effect in, as of, well, it'll be a law as of the 1st of July. But what it requires is that the board will have to develop and implement by January 1st, 2025, a local policy that establishes measures to restrict minors from accessing obscene matter or materials. And this includes, like I said, both public libraries and schools. Did you have enough of those, Shirley? Here. I didn't know who to get. And I guess that's mostly what I was gonna say. I just don't, I think this issue will continue to bubble. And I think we're going to be dealing with it for quite some time. So this will help you get a little bit of a head start on what's going on. On another subject, I think there's been, well, it's sort of a similar subject. I think there's a move underway to revise science books to reflect all of the new woke gender theories. So that's going to be a battle too. So that'll be coming up. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, any board response to open forum? All right, no. All right, moving on. Superintendent report. Superintendent Swaggart.
Thank you, Bishop Carr. As Shirley said at the beginning of the meeting, the student reps aren't here because they didn't have much to report because we've been on spring break since pretty much the last board meeting. My brief is going to be very short as well. As far as the strategic plan update, I do want to mention in public at a board meeting that we have hired 2 new directors and 2 new elementary principals and moved the principal of Canyon Lake to new positions. And that will all officially start July 1st of 2024. The Director of Special Services will be Dr. Kira Comer. The Director of Teaching, Learning, and Innovation will be Jen Roberts, who is currently at Rapid City Alternative Academy. The Principal of Meadowbrook, we are bringing in a wonderful candidate by the name of Becky Hogenkamp from Idaho Falls, moving to our community. Pinedale Principal is Laura, I never say it right, but Cameronian. She has been in our district for quite some time, not only as a student, but as a teacher. And Holly Hoffman is choosing to go to Valley View as the principal there. So at this time, those are all the positions that are filled. We do have some assistant principal positions posted currently and a principal position for Rapid City Alternative Academy. So I'll come with updates on those moving forward. As you know, on the student side of things, we are continuing our testing window. The Smarter Balanced window is open until May. So we have schools that have done it choosing different times to test through that window. So that will be open. We also have end of the year elementary assessments on MAP and the other elementary tests. And we're excited about looking at how those scores come out because it is one way we are tracking the student progress and to report back to the board. Remember, we're looking at growth this year instead of just where their students should be. Spring sports are off and running. I was being funny there because the biggest sports event in the spring is track. But boys tennis is also going, girls golf, softball and baseball, and those are currently club sports. I think softball is an official sport now. Community open houses for South Middle School and Canyon Lake Elementary to celebrate the end of the time in those current buildings. Those are being planned. I believe that the South one is this weekend. Is that correct? Yes, Bobby will get you those dates. I also asked Shirley to get you those dates. And then the buildings receiving the Canyon Lake students are scheduling open houses. And I do know that you are interested as a board. On the communication front, it's hard to do a lot of communicating when everybody's out of the buildings, but Bobby still did a nice job over break communicating things that needed to be communicated. And I know that Coy had quite a few meetings last week on the facility, so I will leave that to them. District highlights, the biggest highlight is we just came off a spring break and that really gives us the pick-me-up that we need to get through April and May. Those are two incredibly busy months for the district, especially our high schools, as we are heading into graduation season and all that comes with that. And as far as the director's reports, I'm meeting this week with almost every director. Special education, we did have Marzano in town the 21st and 22nd before spring break, working with our special education staff. They also met with small groups and a parent group and teacher group, paras, and we'll be bringing forth a report. So when that is ready, we'll bring that to the board. TLI and college and career readiness, transition planning in the works for Jen Roberts moving into that position. Corey and I did meet with Bobby Joe today on some pathway conversation. Remember, we are shifting our thinking from academies to pathways. So you're going to be hearing that. We have some exciting news that we'll be bringing forward there. Federal programs, school improvement planning is the name of the game. Sadly, the state doesn't have everything in order. Usually by this time of year, GMS, which is our grant management system, is open and we are entering stuff into that. They are behind at the state level, not at our level. So we are waiting for them to open that up. And once that opens, we'll be getting our information entered, but we are treating it like we always treat it. We are just doing the work now so that when GMS opens, we can just input that. And although that sounds easy as a person who worked significantly in GMS, it is a typical federal program that makes things 10 times more complicated than I think it needs to be. HR is working on finalizing the contracts so they can go out. We hope to have the groups that have ratified their contracts through negotiations. We hope to have those on the April 16th board meeting so that contracts can go out that week. And then, of course, that always gives us a really good idea in the district of people who don't sign and don't intend to return. So our most accurate idea of staffing comes after contracts have been sent out and received back. On the safety platform, don't know if you noticed it, but on March 20th, which was the Wednesday after the last board meeting, we did a Pennington County-wide emergency notification. So if your cell phones were set up to receive test notifications, you were bombarded with that notification at 1:30. And if you don't know how to set up your phones to receive a test notification, I can certainly help you do that. I know how to now. Every single building participated in that. And it was basically the replacement of what used to be the tornado drills. But we had every building actually push the secure your room button so that we knew they were functioning appropriately. And it was a really great test day. And it was nice that we were participating with the rest of the county as well. And then I will let Kelsey update you on legal things later. So that is my short and sweet report today.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Right, I just want to, in the name and sake of communication, and I'm the last one to have the most accurate information, but I just want, just again, on official records, how parents at South Middle School can understand the change at the end of the year. Do they call the school? Have they been notified? I'm sure they've been notified already, and I just don't want any,
Yeah.
anybody to fall through the communication gap of.
They have been notifying continually and
Okay.
they have invited parents to meetings where they have gone through the plan.
Okay.
And students have also been informed over and over again and are working on their own plan that they will take with them. Hopefully post on the refrigerator so the students know exactly where to be, when to be there for what they're doing. Rapid City Public School Foundation has funded some grants for student field trips. Other organizations have stepped up in our community to fund some student field trips during that time. And if anybody's wondering what we're talking about, of course, the end of this month, the last Friday of April, that will be the last day in-person classes happen in the old South Middle School building. After that point, there's going to be learning outside the walls, and the learning outside the walls does incorporate some in-person time in the building with our class time with teachers, but also a lot of active learning going out to different locations in the community and in the Black Hills. And we're very fortunate to live in a community that has supported that planning. I think, Mr. Schmidt and Mrs. Deming could also come to, we could invite them, Shirley, maybe to the next board meeting so they could walk the board through that as well. And then there'd be a recording that we could refer parents to as well. So that might be a really good idea. And then all of you would have a good idea if any parents do contact you as we get closer to that. I can not say with certainty that somebody has not missed every attempt to be communicated with, but I can assure you that it has been a topic of deep and often discussion at South Middle School with students and anybody who has come into the building this year for parent-teacher conferences and whatnot. However, we know in our community, sometimes situations change and students may end up staying with a family member for a while, and that family member may not have been part of the conversation. So it is certainly worth continuing to have that conversation. Thank you very much for asking.
Yeah, I want to make sure we aren't guilty of over communicating. And so I want to do that. And just to add, the reason why this is happening is because they have to tear down the old school, the old building I think it's going to be a parking lot.
It's going to be a lot of things. There's going to
Okay,
be
a lot of things.
there's going to be green space there. There's going to be a parking lot. Of course, it is an old building. So the first step is asbestos removal.
Yes.
That is the very first step. And that takes very specialized action. So that has to happen. Then the demolition and the carting away of all of that building, then doing the groundwork, covering up everything that I suppose has been buried, that has brought everything to that. They have to clean all that up. They have to install a sewer pipeline through part of that area from the new building. Coy did, I was on an email that, I'm kind of stealing his thunder, but we're 77% complete.
All right.
So that's super exciting. So that is happening, but all of that work, in order to have a smooth start of the year, you have to have a parking lot for teachers to park in and areas for students to be dropped off on. So by doing this now in the spring, we can have an on-time start
Correct.
in the fall.
Correct.
And so, and I seriously want to congratulate the South Middle School students and the teachers and the administration, because I think they have done a really amazing job of putting up with construction on their lot for the last 2.5 years. It's really been a big, huge project, and that community as well, because I know it hasn't always been the best when the trucks are driving off with dirt, because it's an active construction project onto the roads and they're trying to clean that up. But everybody has come together and supported this project, so we are very thankful for
All
that.
right, thank you. Any board members have any other questions on the superintendent report? Mr. Burke?
My hand, can't find my hand. I was just gonna add on that, regarding the communication, it is also on their website. So anyone can go and check it out if you want to.
The schedule.
Yep, I already went and looked because I was curious about what they're
Yeah.
doing. When I saw the one on our previous about giving the grants or whatever, I was like, well, what other fun things are we doing? And they really do have a lot of cool things planned on there.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Sassy.
Thank you, President Carr. So wanted to pick up where we left off at the last board meeting and turning our attention to fiscal year 25 budget and talking about some of our revenue projections in the major funds. And tonight wanted to talk specifically about capital outlay. As we have discussed in the past, capital outlay is a really unique fund, both in terms of exactly what it does and in terms of the unique situation that it is in here in our district. And so I'm going to walk you through a lot of that tonight and how some of these unique factors are impacting that fund. We talked about on the general fund side, what does that typical revenue breakdown look like? And as we turn our attention to capital outlay, that becomes really simple. You all know I'm fond of pie graphs. I did not do a pie graph because it's just one big slice. Because, typically 95 to 97% of capital outlay revenue is local effort or property tax. It is a entirely property tax driven fund. There's typically some revenue coming in from the county for expiring TIF and TID taxes, but that usually makes up 1% or less of the overall revenue. Of course, occasionally there might be federal revenue funds in there, like we've seen over the past several years with the ESSER funds running through, or grant funding if that grant involves some type of a capital expense, typically building or large equipment purchases. But again, 95 to 97% of that revenue is coming directly from property tax or local effort. So of course, it makes those major factors that we're looking to in terms of what is impacting that situation fairly simple, right? Because really then it's our property tax valuation, given that that's really driving our local effort. So unlike the general fund that has really a huge list of factors that are impacting all those different revenue sources, the revenue source in terms of capital outlay is really that one factor. So let's talk a little bit about that property tax valuation. Again, as we have talked about, in the most recent valuation year, the total valuation of the district increased by almost 17% to about 12.47 billion. Valuation has increased approximately 54% since pay 20, the tax year 20. And like we talk about in the general fund, that rapid valuation increase does drive additional property tax revenue into the district. So you see the snapshot there from our working document of our capital outlay projections. Again, the majority of revenue coming in on the local side down here. And we do see from year to year about a $1.36 million increase or about a 4.8% increase around the local effort. Now, probably the first thought that jumps into your head is given the idea that the valuation increased by 17%, the 4.8% increase seems kind of low. So literally that's the rest of this presentation really is trying to explain why that's happening. So overall increase in terms of revenue as we move into next year is projected at about 1.38 million, or about a 4.8% increase in total revenue. So again, why? I think that's the logical question. Similarly to the state aid challenge that we see in the general fund, this is really a formula issue in terms of how the legislation sets out the way that we drive that tax revenue, but in a different way than we see happening with the state aid formula. This formula issue is driven specifically by the legislatively set capital outlay limitations. And I really think it's important to understand those limitations, to understand the issue that the district is facing and how it bleeds over into a lot of our facility issues. So there are really two limitations happening simultaneously when it comes to capital outlay. And the first is called the general rule formula. And this formula limits the growth district's capital outlay can drive from a year-over-year perspective. So what the general rule formula says is that capital outlay revenue cannot grow by more than what is called a growth factor plus 3% on a year-over-year basis. Growth in this particular situation is defined as any new construction which has occurred in the last year within school district boundaries. So pretty simple equation. For example, if the growth of the district was 2%, the district's capital outlay revenue would increase by 5%. So you take the 2% growth plus the 3% of the other piece of the formula, and that's the amount of new revenue that would come into capital outlay as we moved into the next year. Much like we see in the general fund side, the district's property valuation growth can really be misleading in this context. And again, I think we often see that with our stakeholders as we have these discussions, and our stakeholders see their property tax bill increasing. Why is that not matching? And why are you saying that there are fewer and fewer resources coming into these funds?
Can I ask a clarification?
Yes, please.
Like, I'm not Matthew, like Matthew over here.
Yeah.
So that 2%, is that saying like percent of like building permits? So it's not saying like a financial amount, it's saying like if there were 100 buildings, it grew by 2, is that relatively accurate? So it's not talking about like this many dollars, 2% this many dollars, it's talking about like amount of buildings, is that correct?
Yes and no. So essentially what the county is doing when they work their way through that process, the county in particular is the entity that defines that growth formula, and then they send it to the state on behalf of school districts. And what they do, Jamie, is they drill into separating out, okay, from this entire valuation. So we're looking at a total valuation. What part of that valuation was driven specifically by new construction within those boundaries? So new owner occupied status buildings, new commercial buildings, and then they take the value just of that specific category of growth and determine, okay, how much did that grow as a value from a valuation standpoint?
So that's where the growth valuation everywhere else, that's 15%. Doesn't necessarily go directly to, sorry, doesn't actually go directly to, so strange, goodness. Doesn't actually go directly to capital outlay. That's okay. I can now.
You nailed it.
In my mind. Thank you.
You nailed it. Yes, ma'am. You're exactly right. And that's, we're getting there, and that's really what adds complexity to this situation. And specifically, well, excuse me, I have one more slide on that. We'll get to that. So exactly what you just said is really what becomes an issue, Jamie, because if growth is being driven by increases to existing property rather than the new property, it limits a district's ability to increase revenue at the same pace that its property valuation is increasing. And so for our district, again, being in this very unique situation that we have, as a result, we've seen very moderate capital outlay revenue growth over the last decade. And this is really a specific example of that. So this first line is the total valuation increase of the district, and the second line is the growth increase. And then I highlighted the difference between the two. And you can see early on in like the 2019-2020 year, we saw that around 2 to 3%, staying pretty consistent. As we really started to see this aggressive valuation increase, especially over the past 3 years, that difference between those two numbers started to get wider and wider. And as you can see, of course, in 23 and 24, getting up in the 15 and 16% range. And so what that tells us, at least anecdotally, is that the growth around property tax valuation is being driven primarily by growth in existing property rather than new property. Now, that doesn't mean that new property isn't growing rapidly as well. It's just that obviously the portion of the pie, so to speak, that is made up by existing property is growing at such a fast rate that it actually suppresses a lot of those growth numbers, which again makes it difficult and really limits the amount of new revenue that can be driven into capital outlay. So here's where it gets really complex and deep. The second limitation, which is what I think of, it's not called this, but I think of as the overall limitation of capital outlay. And the overall limitation states that regardless of any other factors, the capital outlay max levy request can never exceed $3 per $1,000 of valuation. So your growth could be 1 billion%, you know, any number of other things could be happening, but at no point could a district ever exceed that overall limitation. So they're layered limitations. There's a year-over-year limitation, and then there's the overall limitation. In the way that these two things interact is really complex. So again, we talked about the idea that valuation is increased in a crazy way here in our district. And in that same time frame, so I backed up one more year. That's why this number is different than earlier. 66% from 2019 to 2024. In that same time frame, the district's capital outlay revenue has only increased about $7 million, or about 31%. So essentially it's increased by about half of what the overall property valuation is increased. So in our district's unique case, it would be much more favorable to be able to just levy up to that $3 per 1,000 overall limitation. And really what we see then happening is, as a result of that, is that the district sees a major gap opening between the max request per that general rule and the overall $3 per 1,000 max. And I'm sorry if you can't see that well. I tried to smush it in here. But essentially what we have happening is similar to the last piece of information we looked at. In these early years, there we go. I couldn't see it on my screen. I couldn't tell if you all could see it. The gap between those two areas. So think of this as this bottom line is the actual amount of revenue that the district drove versus what it could have if it was able to levy that overall max limitation. And then this is the difference between those two numbers. So again, early on, we see a fairly minimal difference floating, between the $500,000 to about $750,000 area. As we push into these last several years of really aggressive growth, we see that gap starting to widen, and that number between those two categories start to get bigger and bigger. So in pay 22, that gets up around $1 million. Pay 23, that gap widens to $4.5 million. And in pay 24 up to almost $8.7 million. So essentially what we see happening from a graphical perspective is this huge gap starting to open up between those two limitations. So moving into a conclusion and wrapping all this up, I think what we can certainly say is capital outlay is in a stable place, revenue is increasing. However, the needs are much greater than the amount of revenue generated on a yearly basis. And really the effect of all these unique situational factors that we see happening within that fund and how they interact with these overall limitations is that as valuation increases, the district is severely limited by this general rule formula and unable to capitalize on the growth of valuation and really drive new revenue into capital outlay that we could use to then fund these major capital needs of the district, primarily our building situation. And as you recall, if you recall, this was really the primary focus as we talked with our legislative group moving into this legislative season. Obviously, we discussed some state aid issues and some of those things, but I think, again, in our district's unique situation, this needs to be as much of a focus, especially from a legislative standpoint, because that's really what controls these factors that are limiting us, as any other issue that we take to those folks. And so I will continue to beat the drum on this. I want to try to reach out directly to legislators, talk with them on these issues, and again, try to find middle ground solutions in which we can address these unique issues for us. So with that, Mr. President, I will stop there and answer any questions that anyone has.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. That was
Yes.
a great report. All right, Mrs. Clapham.
I'm full of questions tonight, Coy.
Yeah, please, shoot, fire away.
So, also, I feel like for the public choice, so we have that, say, 30 to 35% gap.
Yep.
So what happens to the property taxes that don't, like that, so that other 30%, does that then go to our local effort that's calculated in the state aid formula? Is that where that goes? Does it go to somewhere completely different? Not. Where does that money live?
So in this particular situation, what happens, Jamie, because there is a totally different levy for capital outlay than anything else, that money doesn't go anywhere. That money is never actually taxed from our local taxpayers and property tax holders. So this is a point I find really interesting about this situation. And I know I have the data here and I could pull it up if you gave me a few seconds, but I think obviously what we always want to be sensitive to as a district is the burden that we're putting on our local taxpayers and understanding, like we saw in the general fund example, that burden continues to grow as the state's burden shrinks. And so I just out of curiosity went back and took a look at if we were able to levy the overall max as opposed to the year-to-year limitation, what would that mean for the common taxpayer? So on a $400,000 property for pay 24, the most current pay year, it would have added about an additional $30 per property. So I think that, you know, when you see that figure, $8 million, for example, that seems like a huge amount. But also when you think about the idea that's being spread over $12.47 billion of valuation, it in reality is a very small amount. And so again, if you think about the additional amount of resources that we could run into our buildings and in a lot of those capital outlay areas that are struggling right now, with that additional revenue that we could generate from that, with really a very small additional burden on our taxpayers, it would be an ideal solution to the situation, or at least a good start that way. But we have to find a legislative solution for that. And we saw how easy that is this year, right? So stuff, but great question.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Ms. Stephenson.
Thank you. So I also just want to wrap my mind around it.
Yeah.
Let's take my house. My house went up 8% this year.
Yeah.
And so when my husband and I are talking, he says, well, our our value went up 8%. It's accurate for me to say, yes, but because we're an existing structure, the school can only value our house at 3% more. Is that, or the district?
Yes, and probably no at the same time. I think, the way that, the county values that, especially on the capital outlay side, again, they are looking specifically at two different categories. So, the way that it makes sense in my mind is first they come in and they put together the total valuation figures of the district. So, as they look at every piece of property, in every category, and okay, here's what that total valuation figure was last year, here's what it is this year, here's the total percentage increase. So that's where we see the 17% increase from 23 to 24. And then they dig down and separate out, okay, let's look at growth and what is the new growth, new residential, new commercial, and separate that growth out. In this situation in particular, in terms of the capital outlay conversation, that's really where, because of the formula, again, it's a formula issue, that's really where the issue lies for our particular district. Because the overall growth, which your home would be counted in, drives that total valuation figure up, which is good for us from a district perspective. However, your particular household, because you're in it, is not included in the growth portion of that. And so ultimately that gets limited, because the district can't capitalize on any of that. So yeah, I think, you know, it is an accurate statement, and especially in terms of the capital outlay conversation, that it's really a limiting factor in the amount of revenue that the district can drive.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then ideally, what would legislation look like? Would it just get rid of the formula?
So
Is that what?
that would be great. I don't think that's gonna happen. That's not probably a reasonable middle ground for a lot of folks. I think that very similar to the state aid formula, a very easy middle of the road solution that wouldn't have a massive impact on either the state or you know, local stakeholders would be a hold harmless of some point. So the idea that if your total valuation increased by X, as opposed to being limited by the year-to-year valuation, that you could levy the max, or you could levy up to a certain amount, like a 2.75 as a floor. So I think that's probably a much more palatable solution for a lot of the legislative folks, is some type of a middle ground in there, a hold harmless, where you could have some sort of a floor that if your total valuation increased by a certain amount, you could be guaranteed to levy at least that floor amount. I think that would be the most reasonable solution to try to approach.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions? I think for me, Mr. Sassy, it's I'm finding the longer I'm on the board, the more we have to do our best to communicate, because, and obviously it's no secret that we'll be seeking a bond. And so many people will say, well, my property taxes went up, so you got more money, so why are you coming at me again? And so it's really kind of hard to explain.
Yeah.
You know, we can't get everybody in the monument and have you do this presentation to everybody.
Right.
And so it's hard on a person by person basis to try to say that, you know, the valuation went up 17%, but the district's revenue didn't go up by 17%. And so we've got a big job in trying to not tell the truth like we've been lying, but trying to explain the really complications of all these formulas. So
no, that's such an excellent point, President Carr. I couldn't agree with you more. I think the ability to to explain this in a way that is short and concise
Yeah.
and gets the point across is the challenge. And I'm open to suggestions
Yeah.
if any of you have any, but it is complex and it's difficult and there's layers and layers to the conversation. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think, again, and it's understandable why it happens from a stakeholder perspective that, hey, I opened up my tax bill. My taxes went up 15%. What is going on? How can you possibly say you're getting less money or you're not getting more money or that doesn't match? And so it's really complex. You're right. And I think you couldn't agree with you more. That's certainly part of our district's challenge as we move into the future and we engage in a lot of these conversations is how do we effectively communicate what's actually happening versus anecdotally what folks think is happening. So great point.
All right, Ms. Simpson, you have anything? Okay. All right, thank
Thank you, sir.
you. Great,
Absolutely.
great report.
Thank you.
All right. We do not have any conflict of interest. We're on to item 12. I will entertain a motion for the approval of proposed agreements. All right, discussion? Any discussion? I'll recognize hands. No discussions, we'll have a roll call.
Troy,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Walt,
Yes.
Kate. Yes. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Any board member would like to pull an item from agenda item 13? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Troy,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Walt,
Yes.
Kate. Yes. Motion carries 7-0.
Oh, look at this, such a wonderful thing. Item number 14. Beautiful. Items for board information. All right, I think Dr. Strasser, is that you? I don't see Mr. Oh, there he is. All right.
There he is.
So both of you are on.
So our annual review of student handbooks. We go through, Mr. Stewart does the bulk of the work in gathering the information, working with principals and bringing that information to you tonight to review. One of the things that I think is important is the consistency of our handbooks from elementary to middle to high school, and then our activities as well. I think Mr. Stewart's worked very diligently on creating consistency. And you can see that in a few of the areas where certain information wasn't in the middle and high school, was in the elementary. So we made sure that that was consistent in all the handbooks. And I'll also say that we're very intentional about making sure that what is brought forward in our handbooks is consistent with district-wide policy. So I think it all fits in there really well. And I'll got anything to add in there?
I don't really. I know that this is a very short list in comparison to years prior. So I'm sure that's a welcomed sight that we're finally dialing things in, I think, in the range of handbooks. As Dr. Strasser said, that we make sure we align with district policies, but also policies of other governing bodies like the South Dakota High School Athletic Association, which is where we see in the high school activities handbook, that was the bulk of the changes. They changed some policy on their end. So thus we nested our policy in the handbook to echo their language in their policy. Otherwise, if you guys have any questions, I can certainly.
I think, did any board members want a hard copy? I know in years past that was offered to board members. Ms. Thomas, you want one? Okay, so.
We certainly can get a
One
hard
hard-
copy for her. You want all of them? Ma'am?
Yeah, well, there's not that much difference between any of them. I'll take the high school and the activities.
Okay. The high school activity, okay.
Okay, anybody else? Any other questions? We're going easy on them tonight. All right. All right, moving right along. Thank you very
All right,
much.
you bet.
Appreciate your presentations. At this time, board committee reports. It's up to you. Or
What-
Walt, I mean, I don't know.
Well, would you like to report on the PAC? Otherwise, I will.
Would you?
I think he was gonna say.
Yeah. Okay,
Would you do
so-
that, Christine? I would appreciate it.
I sure can. My apologies to the PAC is I forgot to bring the agenda. And so I do know that the Club for Boys presented to the PAC and presented their program, educated the PAC members. There was more discussion and planning of the eighth grade Wachipi, the fifth and eighth grade Wachipi and the high school feathering ceremony. There will be no conflict with the music performance that's
Parking.
happening at the monument that night because everybody will be able to park beforehand and, I mean, it's so much earlier that we might have encounter traffic when we leave, but when we arrive, there'll be plenty of parking. So it seemed like a lot of continued business going on that has been, in the works all spring. And I think that's about all I can offer since I don't have the rest of the agenda.
Okay, I do have something to say about the PAC. The board was called out to form a dodgeball team. And so dodgeball registration is $100. And so I quite wisely asked, can we just give the $100 and not have to be hit with the dodgeball? And that was approved. So I will sponsor on the behalf of the board that we will give our $100 and be able to go and watch instead of having to run around and get it. Unless anybody wants to form a team and your entry fee has been paid. So I thought I should let you know about that. All right. Anything else? Walt, was there anything that you thought of that we didn't say? Okay. All right. Any other committee reports? All right, Ms. Clapham?
One, I was interested in the dodgeball till I heard how brutal the firemen were.
That's what I heard.
I thought that was not a good idea.
That's what I heard.
So just really quick, a follow-up and just kind of for both you, community outreach, we haven't met formally, but I have been in communication with Dr. Schlosser to follow up on processes and kind of clarify what that would look like as far as meeting with students and classes. So that's still in the works and, you know, we may or may not be able to do it until the fall of next year, but it is still in process and we're still working on it. So baby steps.
All right. Anybody else? Right, moving on to others. Anybody with an other? All right, Ms. Clapham.
I feel like nobody else has anything to say. My others are just shout out to Black Hawk Elementary. They had their first culture night ever. And if no one has had Bishop Carr's mac and cheese or collard greens, I highly recommend. They were very, very popular. But I just really appreciate Bishop Carr coming and it was really fun with the kids. We had students come up and say, I went all the way from France to the southern United States to China in one night. So they really enjoyed it and it was a really kind of nice way to do a last thing before spring break. So good job, Black Hawk. And it was, I felt an enjoyable experience for the board members who were there. So
I gotta get you those recipes too now.
yes.
Okay. Any other? All right, seeing none. This. Oh, did you have something though? No, oh, but you got kicked off. Okay, I will entertain, let me explain this first. This will not necessarily be a roll call, because Walt, the board member has to be present to be at executive session. So as we take the motion for executive session, we don't need a roll call. Right? Because,
He will participate in this, in the meeting.
all right, I stand corrected. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session. Executive session 1-25 2.1, 2.3, and 2.4. See how I've grown? I've realized that all the first numbers are the same, so. All right, did I? And I got a second. Roll calls, Shirley.
Troy,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Deb,
Yeah.
Michael,
Yes.
Walt,
Yes.
and Kate.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, we are now officially in executive session. We're going to take a small break. Thank you, everyone, for coming. There will be no decisions or votes in our executive session.